Welcome to episode 5 of the Courageous Coach podcast, a podcast where we pull back the curtain on what it really takes to be courageous with your clients, your business, and your life. I'm your host, Melissa Haigh. In this episode, I'm joined by Kerry Laker-Fry. Kerry shares her journey of embracing courage in coaching, the importance of authenticity, and her passion for empowering women. We chat about the challenges of transitioning from internal to external coaching, the impact of historical perceptions on women's capabilities, and the courage it takes to write a book. So, are you ready? Let's dive in. Welcome to the Courageous Coach podcast. It's lovely to have everyone here who is listening or watching. And today I'm delighted to welcome Kerry Laker-Fry as my guest. Welcome, Kerry. It's so lovely to have you here. Thank you for coming along. So we start, as we always do, just with Kerry sharing a bit about you. So tell us about yourself, Kerry.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me along, Melissa. It's genuinely a real pleasure to be here. About me, I am Kerry. I have been a coach for around about 10 years now. My coaching journey has taken me into coaching for corporate organisation and creating accredited coaching pools in there to try and spread the coaching love. And I've branched out to my own business as well, which probably feels a bit more like a side hustle at the moment. So I run She the Success Coach, which has a real focus on helping women define success for themselves and develop the confidence and capability they need to succeed. But when I'm not coaching, I am a big adventure fan. I love traveling and don't do as much as I used to because I'm now a mum of a 2-year-old. But previous adventures have taken me across the world to Everest Base Camp, Peru, Egypt, Cambodia, all sorts of places. So I have a real love of adventure and natural curiosity, I guess.
Wow, I love it. And I'm wondering when the 2-year-old will be old enough to go on adventures himself, right?
My goodness, I cannot wait. Honestly, I really cannot wait. I hope he loves it. He might hate that kind of holiday. He might just want to sit on a lilo in the pool. But yeah, no, I love adventure holidays. Hopefully he'll appreciate being dragged along when he's older.
Really, you just need to start conditioning him now.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So interesting. I think, Kerry, you're my first podcast guest in this series who's both an internal coach and an external coach, right? So I'm immediately curious about maybe that will feature in our conversation, maybe not, right? The kind of difference or similarity, Who knows, right? So tell me, we've been working together a little while since you came on the Courageous Coach program with me and learned all about the work of Brené and all of those great things. So in the I'm going to say the work that you do, what does courageous coaching look like day to day for you?
Day to day, I think courage is really, I think it's really personal. It's intensely personal for each coach, right? And for me, it's very much about, it's related to my expertise value. So I have a really high expertise value. I love collecting knowledge and curating learning and all that kind of stuff. So not knowing the answer is a really uncomfortable place for me to be, which as a coach obviously is quite problematic because we don't know the answers. That's what we're here to help our clients get to. And so being open to the outcome is a daily courageous thing that I bring to my coaching. So I try really hard to put down my clever, which I think is a phrase you introduced me to when we were working together, and instead pick up my curiosity. That is how I try and enter my coaching dynamics and partnerships. Instead of wrestling with that, I need to know the answer, I need to be an expert. It's actually, do you know what? I'm going to lean into that curiosity piece. I'm going to lean into that adventure value that I have. And the other pieces, I think, of coaching courage are about bringing myself to my coaching. So when I first learned how to coach, it was through a corporate organization. It was very much learning the basic models that you all know about, Grow, Oscar, those kinds of things. And I think I learned to do it in a very transactional way. There wasn't much of me that I brought to my coaching. I was trying to be very pure, and I have matured, I think, over the last 10 years as a coach. And it's taken courage to bring me to my coaching. I think I'm a better coach for it, but there's a real vulnerability there, right? Showing up as who you are, because not everybody's going to love you. Not every client is for you, and you're not for every client, and that is okay. But it takes courage, I think, to get to that space.
Yeah, because we all like to be liked and be wanted, right? Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And I think because you used the word, or you said matured then, and it was funny as you said that. I smiled to myself because I was thinking you were reminding me of this idea of kind of coach maturity, because I think I really resonate with what you're saying, and I think most coaches would, right? When we start, it's quite often, what I might call foundational, transactional, as you called it, coaching, right? Here's your model, here's your toolkit, this is what you must do, this is what you shouldn't do, and all of that stuff, which we all need. But then we begin, if we choose to realize that actually, if we want our conversations to be transformational, if we want to create deep connection with our clients and so on, we've also got to be human and be ourselves in the space, right? So, and you're right, absolutely right, that that's vulnerable in itself, showing up and letting yourself be seen. But there's also that internal battle. There certainly was for me as well, anyway, of that kind of, but I was taught that it was, it's all about the client and it's not about me. And so I probably shouldn't be doing that. There was a kind of that internal stuff going on for me as well. I don't know, did you find that?
Oh, hugely. Yeah. There was, I think, when I was experimenting, I guess, with, okay, that it just feels right to give more of myself to this partnership, or it feels right to go in this direction, but that goes against what I learned. When I was exploring with that phase, there was a lot going on in my head of shoulds, and you should do this, but this is the right way. And I think early coaches and or people who are early on in their coaching career, certainly how I experienced it, I just wanted to collect knowledge and models and arm myself with all of these tools, like create this sort of, as Brené will probably call it, armor. And actually, I think as I've matured, it's about learning those to let them go, and knowing that they're just there in the background. And actually, the richness is the humanity that you bring to your coaching. It is the depth of relationship, and that requires you to kind of let that armor, those models and stuff fall away, and step into your own way of coaching.
Yeah, I love that. It makes me go also to goosebumpily, because that's the joy. That's where the joy of coaching is for me, right? When you get to that point. And so I'm curious then. So, if I was a fly on the wall, if you like, of a coaching session with you, or maybe if I was being coached by you, right? What would bringing Kerry to that coaching session, what would that look like? Or what would you be doing or saying or feeling that would represent being you as a coach?
I think for me, it is, and certainly part of the work that we did together when we did the Dare to Lead training, is I am much more in tune with my emotions and how I am and how I show up than I used to be. And I think previously I would have put all that to one side, put it in a nice, neat little box, and just kind of that's for later. That's for my reflection time. Whereas now I think I use that more as a barometer to be like, oh, that's really interesting. This is how this is making me feel. Is that interesting to you? And how does that make you feel? And I think I share a lot more of myself to act as a bit of a barometer for the client. And sometimes that's not useful, and that's okay. But sometimes that is really useful, because it's either interesting to them that's created a particular feeling for myself, or that's making them reflect on, oh, actually, that's how this is making me feel. So I think being in tune with my emotions and bringing that as a sort of barometer-esque tool to my coaching is how you would see that coming through.
Yeah. Because I always think it's super interesting, because I think when we think about sharing something, like, oh, I'm noticing as you share that I'm feeling right? Whatever that is, excited or stressed or overwhelmed, or I don't know, whatever it is, right? I think there are two things that happen. I think there's that part that we have a responsibility as a coach to understand, is that my stuff, or is it in the relationship between us, and or could it be the client's stuff, right? But then there's this piece about, when we share it, and almost the vulnerability of it, or the worry maybe in my mind sometimes when I share it, is I think, but what if I'm wrong? Yeah. What if that isn't relevant? And what I learned from experimenting with it and sharing it with the client is that even if what I share, the emotion I feel in that moment, is not what they feel at all, most of my clients have kind of said, no, it's not. I don't feel that, but what I do feel is, and I'm like, brilliant, right? That's still great. I'm like, fantastic. So it's sort of sharing, but not wanting to be right as you share, and holding it lightly, I think.
Absolutely. And I think I frame that as offering. It's something that's offered. It's not something that has to be received and taken by the client, but it is put out there, and they can either choose to use it and it's useful, or leave it and that's fine. And that's a big part of contracting for me, because the other thing that I'm really keen to do is understand from the client, how would you like us to interact together? Because there will be times during our coaching where something's not being said, or I'm noticing something that's a little bit awkward, but I think it's really useful for us to highlight and have a conversation about. And I want to do that in service of you, but I want to do that in a way that suits you and doesn't bring up your armor and your defenses. So how is that best for me to do that for you? And we have that conversation during contracting. And to be honest, 99% of the time they say, oh, just say it. Yeah, that's great. I want to know these things. Just say it. And I genuinely don't think I've ever had a situation where that's been super problematic. It's been awkward, but 90% of the time that is absolutely sort of like almost like a little key that unlocks sort of a deeper level of coaching. So I think that contracting piece is where you can really work out with the individual, how does that look for us in this partnership?
Yeah. And I also guess in that moment as well, you get a sense of, based on how they react, the language they use, their bodies and all of those kind of things, but how they react in that moment gives you an indication of their level of comfort or discomfort, at working in that way. So getting it, that's data, right? Early on in the relationship. Yeah. Brilliant. Oh, it's super exciting, because I'm sort of, this is, I have to come back, because this is the thing I love about conversations with you, Kerry, is that I have to come back to your piece around expertise as a value, and, putting down your clever, because you and I share that same value, right, of expertise. And so I always feel a little bit like I'm safe, and I have a kindred spirit in the conversation with me, because, I've often felt in coaching circles, I suppose, that almost admitting that, I actually really value expertise and knowledge and knowing stuff, it almost feels like a little bit naughty.
Yeah, it's not
kind of rules, in coaching. So it's always lovely to find someone who's like, yeah, do you know what? I tussled with that too. And we're not alone, right? Which is just such an important thing for us. So I'm really curious, because I started as an internal coach as well. And so I'm immediately drawn to that idea of in your day job role, right? In your corporate life, if you like, you're an expert, and you have knowledge, and you're rewarded and recognized and valued for that knowledge and expertise. And then you step into the coaching space and suddenly that's different. So have you found a difference, if you like, between internal and external coaching in that way? Or is it similar? How have you dealt with that? I'm wondering.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a difference. So, I mean, I obviously speak from only my own experience, but I feel that in my internal corporate coaching world, it is very much a bit of a dance between coaching and mentoring. I think there is, and certainly the way I was taught to coach, the real pure coaching, like you don't offer any advice or, anything like that whatsoever. But when you're dealing with graduates that don't know what they don't know, and they're coming into a company, they're completely new, they don't necessarily understand the politics of the organization as well. And so you're supporting them. There is definitely a mix of coaching and mentoring. And I think that takes some real skill to navigate that balance. And again, for me, that is very much about offering. People are smart, right? They know when you've got an answer in your head. People's intuition, they know when you're thinking something. Yeah. So you don't want to end up in a situation where you're like, not that I know the answer, but I've got a good idea where would be useful to point you, because they'll know that you've got something and they'll desperately then start trying to grope for that answer and not get there. And that's just not good for the dynamic. So I think offering to say, look, I've got some thoughts. I'll offer them to you, but let's go with you first. Let's have this conversation. We could come back to these thoughts, and at the end, we'll see if they're useful. And if they're not, fine. And if they are, great. We can have another conversation about that. And I think sometimes to just get out there, this is in my head, this is something that could be useful, but let's stick with you, and then we'll revisit that later. That seems to be the balance that I find that you get more of in the corporate world, but it's more, I'd say, pure coaching in inverted commas in the external world.
Yeah. Because I think that's I love the word offering, right? I love that you use that, because it has a lightness to it, right? Which is very different from telling, for example. Yeah. It's just a lighter way, and it creates a different headspace, mindset for me when I say I'd like to offer something, even more so than, can I share something with you? I tend to try and say, I'd like to offer something. I don't know, just it shifts my mindset around my attachment to that thing that I'm offering, right? And I actually think what you're describing there in the corporate world, I think that skill that you've just described is super important, because I think there are far too many conversations at work that we go into believing that we are 100% right, and probably everyone else in the room is only 80% right, or they're wrong, right? And we are right. And there's no lightness in that, right? And so I think that ability to be flexible and adaptable in the moment is so important at work. So that skill that we have as the coach in that coaching style or coaching skill, mindset even maybe, is actually, I think it could be really powerful if leaders, for example, right, went into conversations in exactly the same way. I'm not here to be right or to prove that I'm right. I think there's a lovely Brené quote actually, which is something like, this is not about, I don't want to be right, I want to get it right. And that's kind of just a different, so important. Really,
yes. And that's definitely something that I have. It's a little confidence gremlin, I guess, that I've had sort of niggling away at me since I returned from maternity leave. That was a really tricky transition. It was one where all my colleagues had moved on a year, and I'd been, 14 months out of the workplace. And so I came back very much questioning a lot of things, identity one, but knowledge very much another. I was, wildly behind the curve on a really big project that people were working on. And because I value expertise, right, that was even more uncomfortable. And I think I had a deep-rooted belief of knowledge is my credibility, and that is my power. And I've worked really hard to change that to, it's not about what I know, it's about my capacity to learn. And now I'm really confident. Okay, I might not have the answer, but I'm really good at learning, and I'm cool with that. And actually nobody has all the answers. So I've really worked hard to shift that. And I think that's really helped me and coaching conversations with courage as well, and be a bit more comfortable being like, I'm going to give myself permission to not know here. And that's okay. And that's really interesting because, if there is ever any temptation, we've all been there, right? To, I've done this, I've experienced this, I know the answer. You can't go there because you don't. And that's just how it is. So
yeah, absolutely. And what a lovely mindset shift, right? I might not know, but I can learn. And that again is another joy of coaching, is that, we learn so much from our clients as well as them learning, right? I'm constantly astounded by things that they say or share, and I'm like, wow, that's really insightful. I hadn't thought of it like that before. So that having that, again, just that shift from I need to know to I'm here to learn, it's again, just it lightens stuff, takes the pressure off us to get it right and to know the answers.
And I think it has something, it definitely impacts the dynamics. And I think, what you were saying earlier about the lightness of the word offering, I think the thing for me is it changes the power dynamics. If I'm offering it, it's out there in space and there's no power dynamics. Whereas if I'm saying, can I share, the power sits with me to put that out there, as opposed to I'm just dangling it here for you to take or to not.
Yeah. And that power dynamic, it exists in all coaching relationships, but it's super important to be aware of it as an internal coach, right? What power do I have here because of my job title, and my tenure, or whatever power I'm bringing into this space? What power does my client have, or what power am I giving my client? Because I don't know, maybe you're coaching someone who's more senior to you in the organization. It's all of that at play. Yeah. I tell you the other thing I'm super interested in from your introduction, Kerry, because I think many coaches listening to this podcast, including me, will have been on or have been on a very similar journey to you. Become a coach internally through their organization, and then at some point have decided to set up a side hustle or go part time, and then eventually maybe they've become stepped into their own business. And one of the things that I often see in that transition is and it happened for me when I came out of the corporate world into, right, I'm going to do this coaching thing full time, was, well, who do I want to coach? And I was like, well, I want to coach leaders. And it was like, okay, I'm going to need to be way more specific than that. What's that actually about for me? And it took me a long time when I was setting up the business. And I mean, like at least a couple of years really, before I got really clear on who are the people I want to work with, who's my ideal client, who don't I want to work with, which is super important too. And yet in your introduction, and you called it a side hustle, right? You already have a really clear picture of who you want to work with, right? As a coach. So I'm really curious about where that passion's come from.
Yeah. I am really clear on who my clients are. I really want to support women who are ambitious. They're looking to develop their career. They're looking to develop their confidence and capability, and that they're ready to do that inner work to help them succeed, whatever success looks like for them. And that really comes from a place of a passion for supporting equality and helping women release their potential. My degree is in ancient history and archaeology, so I am fascinated by our history, and I'm currently writing a book called Brilliance is a Boy Thing. And spoiler alert, it's not. And it's on the history of women, or I should say the history we've never been taught about women and our stories and our successes. And history has largely been written by those in power, right? Which for the majority of certainly the Western world, but the world is men. So women's stories have been left out, and we carry this baggage from, hundreds and thousands of years ago, these perceptions about our capability, about, that we're emotional in inverted commas, and all of this stuff is baggage that ancient history has lumbered us with, and it still impacts us today. So I'm really passionate about supporting women to help get rid of that baggage and to be able to step into their potential and realize their success. It's something I'm super passionate about. It's something I'm also really aware. I think we need to understand that women don't need fixing. So women's coaching and mentoring programs, I think, are incredible. I think there is a lot of research and a lot of measures that show that they work. but they are working in a rigged system. And this isn't about those programs fixing women. It's about helping them exist in a system that needs fixing. So, I just want to call that out, because I think that is going to be a debate that really comes up over the next 5 to 10 years. Like, how do we fix the system as opposed to trying to fix the individual?
Yeah.
But that's where it comes from.
So, right. Okay. I'm like, okay, mind blown. There's something there that I want to talk about. I mean, you had me at Brilliance is a Boy thing, like you say, shock horror, it isn't.
Yeah.
What a great title for a start. I'm like, I'm buying it. I'm already in. If I saw it on a shelf, I'd be like, yeah, I'm buying that. Brilliant. And this, I think, is such an important point that you make about the system. I had a really personal experience of this recently, actually, where I was working with a therapist on various kind of challenges around business and coaching and life and menopause and all of the stuff that I'm contending with at my stage of life, midlife, we might call it. And we were unpacking stuff, as you do. And I sort of came across these messages that I'm carrying about what it means to be a woman, right? What it means to be female. And I was thinking to myself, where's that come from? Because I've got really strong role models. My mum's a really strong, woman, and, great women role models at work. And it's like, where the heck has that come from? I don't where. And I sat and I went, it has to have come from the system, from society, because no one's ever actually told me that message. Mm-hmm. It's just in there. And that was really kind of enlightening, but a scary moment, because it's almost like programming, but you don't know you've been programmed.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Wow. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the word hysteria, you will have heard women being called hysterical. Have you ever heard a man be called hysterical? Absolutely. I doubt many people have. But the word hysteria comes from the Greek hystera, which means pithos. And that was a jar in ancient Greece. And the ancient Greeks thought that women's wombs were jar-shaped. And Aristotle pondered that women suffer from an excess of emotion because their wombs wander around their body once a month. So we're carrying this ancient baggage, this hysterical emotional label that we've got is from, hundreds and hundreds of years ago in ancient Greece, and wildly incorrect ideas about our biology. But yet we carry it.
Still
with us.
Carrying those messages. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, if you heard it here first, get the book. When out there. When are you publishing, Kerry?
I haven't got a date yet, but it will. I'm aiming for the beginning of March, but it will be this year. So yeah,
this year.
Yes.
Okay, you heard it here first. Amazing. Okay, so I'm wondering about coming kind of back to courage and all of the work that you're doing, and how would you say kind of developing your courage building skills? Taking that time to really dig into courage and vulnerability and develop those skills. We've talked a little bit about how it's changed you, as all the things that you're doing differently as a coach, maybe now that you might not have done before. But I'm thinking now about the kind of courage and vulnerability to write a book. So can you say something about that? How's that been?
Oh, it's putting yourself out there a bit, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's interesting. You have this idea, you hope other people will like it. You think it's really interesting, and you put a lot of, hundreds of hours into writing. I mean, it's taken me 4 years. And then you put it out into the world for people to love, not love, critique, give you feedback. And that is a courageous thing. But I think you have to hold on to the reason that you did it and who you've done that for. And I guess we'll see what happens. I suppose ask me once it's published, and I guess we'll have another conversation about how courageous I felt then. But right now, I think because it's aligned with a really deeply held passion and my values and really wanting to make a difference, that is giving me the courage,
right,
to put myself out into the world and it be seen for however it is seen.
Yes. Yeah. Same as coaching, right? Some people will like it, some people won't, and that's fine. Yeah, totally. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think you're right. This is this whenever we put ourselves out there, that's kind of, when we feel vulnerable, and those moments of vulnerability are our measure that we're about to do something brave. Yeah. So and leaning into the discomfort of the vulnerability is the bit that we've got to work on, right? Because most often we kind of go, oh no, don't like the feeling of that, so I won't do that anymore. Whereas it's like the whole book writing process, from I've got an idea for a book, right, to actually writing it and editing it and changing it and all those things that I'm sure happen along the way.
Yeah.
Dry periods, periods when you write like a mad person, and then through to publishing, and now it's on a bookshelf somewhere in Waterstones or other independent booksellers are available. And so I'm kind of thinking about, this is not just one moment of courage, not one arena, as we would talk about stepping into your courage, stepping into that arena. It's actually a whole series of them. So, they're gonna keep coming, once it's on the shelf, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just about what you're saying yes to. It's not just, I am saying yes to evenings where I work on my book, an hour a weekend where, I think you and I talked about, okay, how do I do these things in bite size? And like, if I commit to just 1 hour, and I'm still doing that. And it's not just what you say yes to, it's what you say no to make that happen. And having the courage to say no to an hour with my husband and my son at a weekend, and saying no to vegging out on the sofa and eating chocolate and watching CSI because that's all I want to do after work, but actually I need to pick up a different laptop and start working my book, right? So it's courage is not just about saying yes to those moments. I think it's also what you say no to walk into that arena in the first place.
Yeah, totally. And I'm kind of reminded as well that when we do the courage building work and we talk about, those arena moments, those moments where we choose to show up and be seen, and we experience, vulnerability, risk and uncertainty and emotional exposure and all of those things. And often in those moments, our choice is to armor up, to self-protect and not be seen, not show up, not write the book, essentially. And what the alternative to that is, or what we teach is the alternative to that, is to keep that armor off. What do we replace it with? And you said values, right? That, for me, it's values and grounded confidence. But you mentioned your values there. And I think that knowing your values, and by that I mean practicing them, not just professing them, not just these are the words. What do they actually mean? That's how we can step into that arena with courage and lean into the vulnerability that's inevitable, is because we're really clear on, how do I want to show up in this space? What are my values? What's my passion, my beliefs, my why? All those things that you were talking about there. And so those values, your values are showing up for you in this process, but they're not just showing up as words, are they? So how are you practicing your values, if you like? How are you leaning into or living into those values as part of this book writing process?
So I think it starts with, as you said, values exercises, I think, are powerful for everybody to do. I think they're a compass that guide our decision making, how we feel about where we spend our time, what we do. And like you said, they're not just a list of words that might mean something. But for me, one of the most useful exercises I did off the back of our Dirtily training was, okay, so what does that look like? What does expertise look like if I'm doing it well? And what does it look like if I'm doing it badly? And being really clear with myself, okay, so what that looks like when I'm doing it well is this. For me, what does adventure look like if I'm doing it well? It means saying yes to opportunities, like writing a book, and not knowing the outcome, but being open to what adventure might bring. Expertise means taking opportunities to learn, but also picking up my curiosity and being comfortable with, I don't know the answer, but this is a really great opportunity to add to that library of knowledge that I have sat inside my head. And so I think everybody, it's a great exercise for everybody to do. I would absolutely urge you as a coach, if you haven't done that exercise and you want to flesh out your values, do that. This is what this value looks like when I'm living it. This is what this value looks like when I'm doing it badly. It will help you show up in a way that aligns with who you are.
Yeah, totally. And guides you, as you said, it's compass, right? Guides your decision making. And in those moments of vulnerability and fear, okay, what will it look like to live into my values in this moment, just in this moment? Not, I'm going to show it with expertise. It's like, well, that's lovely, but what does that mean, right? So what is that going to look like? And that allows us to really lean into those values, and they're our strength when we're in, when we're struggling or in discomfort or fearful, right? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
I love it. So I always ask the question in the podcast around, what's your call to courage that you're leaning into right now? Now, I don't know, maybe we've talked about that with your book. I mean, crikey, you're going to publish a book this year, but I don't know, maybe there's something else. So what's your call to courage right now that you're leaning into, Kerry?
So what I'm leaning into right now is comparison and having the courage to stay in my lane. I think coming back from maternity leave and seeing how other coaches with their own businesses or my colleagues in the corporate world have progressed and where they're taking their careers, and being really unsure in that moment of who am I now? Like, I've spent 14 months being a mum. I'm now back in the workplace. Who am I as a person? Where do I want to take my career? What does coaching look like for me going forwards? There's a whole lot of uncertainty there. And I think it's really tempting to look at what other people are doing and comparing yourself and going, oh my God, a year ago, we were both at this level and now that person's doing this and that person's doing that. And I should, looking out for those lovely little I shoulds, which are always a good red flag. And for me, it's having the courage to stay in my lane and know that the end vision of what I want to do and building my company, She the Success Coach, and creating not just opportunities to do one-to-one coaching with people, but create a coaching and mentoring program, create a charity arm of that really supports women who haven't got as much access to education and coaching opportunities. That I'd love to stand up in lecture theatres at universities and give young women all the knowledge that I have now. Not that I know everything, but I would have loved to have had when I was 20 and entering the workplace, right? That's kind of what I'd love to do. And just being really courageous about that's the right path for me. It doesn't matter what they're doing over there is what I'm trying to lean into.
I love that. I love that because there's such, I can see it because obviously, and if you're watching us, then you can see it too. But if you're listening, you may have heard it in Kerry's voice I can really, your passion is so evident from your body and from, how you talk about this work. It's like, okay, you're called to do this, right? This is, this could be a good idea for a business. I'm called to do this work, right? And so it's always, I love seeing that in people because like you say, that gives you this is my lane. This is where I'm going. This is my vision. And those people over there are doing that and those people over there are doing that. Good for them. I'm in my lane on track to my vision. Because you're right. Comparison is it's so tough, particularly, it's tough for everyone, but I'm imagining, I know it's tough in the coaching world, right? All these coaches who are, smashing it and making all this money and got all these clients and are doing all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, here's little me, doing my little thing. And what's wrong with me? What am I not doing that they are? And all of that comparison, which is just not helpful at all. And like you said as well, comparison to, what other parents are doing, what other, mums who are working in
sure.
What are they all doing? And look how they've got their stuff together and all of that. So I love that. This is my lane. This is my vision. And I'm working towards something that is your calling. It's just, I love seeing that energy in you as you talk about it. And I have no doubt that you will get there, right? And I might be in the audience going, there she is on that stage. Amazing.
Watch this space. I hope so. I do hope so. But it's having the courage to stay in your lane. And I think also for me, the conviction that I'm not late, I'm right on time for my own journey. It doesn't matter where other people are. I'm on this step of my journey. You can't compare your step 1 to somebody else's step 37, right? So
absolutely. 100%. I love that. Yeah, I'm right on time. Brilliant. All right, Kerry. Well, look, I always end these podcast conversations with the same question around, what's one thing that you feel every coach should know about courage?
Courage is uncomfortable. I think, as Brené would say, embrace the suck, right? Yeah, it's uncomfortable, but it's worth it. And for me, who we are is how we coach. I think courage is something we need to start with ourselves, and it will follow us to our clients. So yeah, embrace the suck.
Yeah, I love it. Absolutely.
If you're uncomfortable, you're doing it right.
You're doing it right, for sure. Yeah. And I always say to people, you know, when they begin the programs or they, you know, we chat about the work I do, I'm like, I'm not here to make it easy, because it isn't ever going to be easy, right? It's always going to be a bit uncomfortable and a bit icky. But it's about leaning in, embracing it, as you say, definitely. So yeah, I love that. It's uncomfortable, but it's worth it. Yeah, we'll take that. We'll take that. Brilliant. Kerry, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the podcast today. I've loved chatting with you. I'm so excited to see where you go next. I can't wait for the book. Look, you said it now, so it's definitely coming out this year.
Yeah.
I cannot wait for the book. I mean, it sounds enlightening. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, okay, I need to read this book, because this is going to light up so many things that for me are like, why do I think that? Don't know. So yeah,
really excited to read the book and hear where you go next with this. But thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you so much as well. I've genuinely absolutely loved it, and I'm sure there'll be more to come from both of us.
100%. Take care.
Great. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the show. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. You can visit my website, melissahaig.com, to find out more about the work I do to help coaches like you be more courageous with their clients, their business, and their lives.